in a moment that seized the nation's attention like a bolt of electricity ripping through the stale air of political discourse. Former President Donald Trump once again proved that his ability to set the country on edge with just a few words remains dangerously intact. During a closed-door donor event at Mar-a-Lago, Trump reportedly said, "If I were still in the White House, we'd bomb Iran, without question." The quote, first leaked anonymously and then confirmed by multiple sources, lit up political media like a flare in a powder keg. The former president's offhand remark was quickly met with either loud cheers from loyalists or gasps of horror from military veterans, diplomats, and members of Congress who understood the full gravity of such a suggestion. But while most politicians either ducked or tiptoed around the fallout, it was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett who didn't just respond, she delivered a searing, no-holds-barred rebuke that rattled the very foundations of Capitol Hill and sent a powerful message across the globe. The context behind the quote is worth understanding. The Mar-a-Lago dinner had all the hallmarks of Trump's trademark bravado: wine glasses clinking, MAGA faithful grinning, and the former president holding court like a monarch who'd never quite accepted the loss of his crown. Speaking to a room of wealthy donors and longtime supporters, Trump was trying to paint himself as the tough guy America needed. According to a leaked audio recording, he was discussing the Middle East and criticizing President Biden's current approach to Iran, which Trump labeled as weak and pathetic. Then came the line that triggered a firestorm: "If I was still in the White House, we'd bomb Iran, without question." He said it with confidence, like a punchline, and the room reportedly burst into laughter and applause. But outside those walls, the reaction was far from celebratory. The implications were immediate and severe. Foreign policy experts expressed alarm. Military leaders past and present raised eyebrows. And for everyday Americans still carrying the psychological and economic scars of decades-long conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, the idea of casually threatening another war in the Middle East was nothing short of nauseating. It wasn't just rhetoric, it was a chilling reminder of how easily the nation could be dragged into another devastating chapter of endless warfare. Yet despite the national uproar, many on Capitol Hill remained frustratingly silent. Until, that is, Representative Jasmine Crockett stepped onto the House floor with a printed copy of Trump's quote in her hand and fire in her eyes. Crockett, never one to shrink from confrontation, took her time before speaking. As cameras panned the room, a hush fell over the chamber. She stood at the lectern, holding up the quote for all to see before beginning what would become one of the most powerful and impassioned speeches of her career. Her voice didn't tremble, it didn't waver, it surged. "We are not going to pretend like this is just another Trumpism," she began. "This isn't about slogans or sound bites. This is about the power to end lives. This is about the reckless suggestion that bombing a sovereign nation should be done casually, without question. That should send shivers down every spine in this building, Democrat or Republican." The moment crystallized into something far larger than a political disagreement. It became a referendum on leadership, accountability, and the way war is spoken about in the corridors of American power. Crockett continued, "We have people in this chamber who have never worn the uniform, who've never seen the battlefield, and yet they cheer the notion of bombs like it's campaign confetti. Let me be perfectly clear, this is not leadership. This is not patriotism. This is performative madness that gambles with global security." As murmurs began to rise from certain members on the other side of the aisle, Crockett pressed on with unrelenting precision. She invoked the Constitution, reminding her colleagues that war powers were designed to be checked, not handed over to whoever screamed the loudest. She pointed to the Authorization for Use of Military Force, AUMF, resolutions, how they've been abused, stretched, and misused for over 2 decades. "We've seen this movie before. We've watched lies lead to body bags. We've watched fear sell itself as strategy. And here we are again, with a man who once held the nuclear courts telling a room full of billionaires that we should bomb a nation with 85 million people, without question." The phrase itself, "without question," became Crockett's focal point. She repeated it again and again, slicing through the chamber's fragile composure. "Without question? That's not how democracies work. That's not how decisions of war and peace are made. That's how tyrants operate. That's how empires fall. And if we keep brushing off these statements as mere bluster, then we're complicit in paving the road to ruin." Her words didn't just shake the room, they reverberated beyond it. On social media, clips of her speech exploded. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all flooded with snippets of Crockett's firebrand defense of reason over rage. Hashtags like #without question and #Crockett strikes back topped the trends. In just hours, millions of Americans had watched her take a verbal sledgehammer to the casual warmongering that had too long defined U.S. foreign policy narratives. Even more remarkable was what followed, a moment of stunned silence. The typical partisan jeers didn't come. The usual procedural interruptions didn't materialize. For those few moments, Crockett held the floor like a lioness, daring anyone to challenge her. And challenge her they did, but not in the way they intended. Several Republican lawmakers attempted to clarify Trump's comments the next day, suggesting that the former president was merely making a hypothetical or issuing a strategic warning. Crockett wasn't buying it. If it was a joke, it wasn't funny, she said bluntly to reporters. If it was a threat, it wasn't justified. And if it was a policy, it was criminally insane. Her sharp condemnation wasn't just emotional, it was informed. Crockett pulled from classified briefings, quoting real assessments of what a military confrontation with Iran could look like. Civilian casualties, regional chaos, blowback against American allies. She cited intelligence community reports and nonpartisan think tanks. War isn't won in applause lines. It's fought in blood and terror and sorrow. And I won't sit silently while a man who once dodged the draft plays pretend general to a room full of sycophants. Crockett's speech became the centerpiece of late-night discussions, political panels, and editorial write-ups. Foreign journalists covered it with admiration. Diplomats from several allied nations quietly expressed appreciation behind the scenes. The congressional inbox of her office reportedly overflowed with letters, veterans, military families, and even moderate Republicans thanking her for putting patriotism before politics. One retired admiral wrote, "Representative Crockett reminded us that the soul of America still has defenders who understand the cost of war." For Crockett, the moment wasn't just about opposing Trump, it was about demanding that America grow up, that it stop viewing foreign policy as a theater of chest-thumping and start treating it as the delicate, dangerous balancing act it is. "I want my country to be safe," she said in a follow-up interview. But safety doesn't come from reckless threats. It comes from strength, yes, but also wisdom, and from knowing when to speak and when to listen. Meanwhile, Trump, in typical fashion, doubled down. In an interview with a conservative radio host, he scoffed at the backlash. "They don't get it," he said. "Iran respects strength. That's what I bring. That's what Biden doesn't have. People like that woman in Congress, what's her name? Crockett, they're weak. And weakness gets us nowhere." The dismissal only fueled Crockett further. "Let him call me weak," she responded. "Because if courage means wanting to bomb people with no plan and no conscience, then I'll wear my humanity as armor." Within days, a group of Democratic lawmakers introduced a resolution condemning unilateral and unprovoked threats of military force. Though it faced immediate resistance from GOP leadership, the resolution marked a symbolic shift in tone. Members of Congress were no longer content to let Trump's provocations go unchallenged. Crockett, for her part, continued to lead the charge, appearing in town halls and news segments warning Americans not to become numb to the rhetoric of war. And it wasn't just politicians taking note. Activist groups rallied behind Crockett's words, organizing vigils and teach-ins about the dangers of Middle Eastern conflict. College students painted murals of her image with the words, "without question," as a critique of thoughtless violence. Even some conservative veterans voiced support. One Marine Corps veteran tweeted, "Jasmine Crockett just said what many of us have wanted to hear for 20 years. War is not a punchline." In the weeks that followed, it became clear that Crockett's fiery rebuttal had fundamentally changed the conversation. No longer was it about Trump's usual noise, it was about the consequences of that noise. And who was brave enough to stand up against it? Crockett didn't just respond, she exposed. She peeled back the layers of false bravado to reveal the dangerous emptiness beneath. She reminded America what true courage looks like, not in threats, but in truth, not in volume, but in vision. And if this moment proves anything, it's that voices like Jasmine Crockett's aren't just needed, they're essential. When the drums of war beat louder, it takes uncommon courage to stand in front of them and say no, to demand better, to ask questions, to choose life over legacy and clarity over chaos. If her words moved you, if you believe that leadership should be grounded in conscience and courage, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, And hit the bell so you never miss when someone stands up, speaks out, and shakes the nation with truth. The battle for sanity isn't over, but with voices like Jasmine Crockett's, there's still hope that we can win it.